Hello, hey class. So today I will be presenting my operating system and firewalls presentation. I am Christiana Efrier. So some key contents in this PowerPoint will consist of Windows Server 2019, Ubuntu 20 Server, Windows Firewall, and IP tables. Some keywords we will be highlighting throughout this whole presentation includes hardening, OS, and firewalls. Now, to get more in depth or the definition of each one, hardening is the eliminating means of attack by patching vulnerabilities and turning off non-essential service. OS in this presentation will be Linux and will be Ubuntu 20 LTS and Microsoft Server 2019. And firewalls monitor ingoing and outgoing of traffic, and it allows what goes in and what goes out. So the first operating system we will be talking about today is the Windows Server 2019. Now you might be like, what is the Windows Server 2019? The Windows Server 2019 is a Microsoft operating system designed to increase the security of businesses to prevent risk by having different layers of protection integrated into a system. Not saying other servers were not as security advanced, but in this server, they take security very serious since it's businesses involved, and the main goal is to prevent risk or threat going into the system. Some key features of the Microsoft Server 2019 includes the desktop experience. So desktop experience is being able to install different applications onto the server. Some examples of the application is the snipping tool. So in the Windows Server 2019, it uses long-time servicing channel desktop experience. So it makes the experience per se seamless. And most of the time, the applications are already pre-installed onto the computer. You don't have to, go out and search for them compared to the previous servers, which use the semi-annual channel, also known as the SAC. It did not include a desktop experience, so it made it a little bit harder. The next one is the Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection, which detects real-life threats and prevent them from happening. And under the Windows Advanced Threat Protection, they work together per se, is the Exploit Guard, which balances security risk. Another great feature is the great support for Linux. With the other servers, it wasn't really great support for Linux per se. It wasn't as seamless as the Windows Server 2019. With this Windows Server 2019, you could miss different OS environment and you will have great security compared to the other ones, which if you mix it, you might have mixed reviews. And then the last feature is its performance is improved in Hyper-V, and of course it has more space and storage. Hyper-V is a virtual machine in the Windows Server and Windows servers, so the increase of performance in those make it easier to explore different virtual environments. So some hardening recommendation for the Windows Server 2019 includes enabling Windows Defender Exploit Guard. The Windows Defender Exploit Guard is actually new to the Windows Server 2019. It works very well with the advanced threat protection. It's like a double layer. So the Windows Defender Exploit Guard, one of its main goals is identify malware and block malicious file from getting to the machine. With this, you will not, 9 times out of 10, you are prevented from getting in contact with any threat because it gets the job done before it could get to the general public. The local administrator password solution is a great one because passwords need to change every second. And most time admins do not have time to change passwords every second. So the big solution that Windows Server 2019 does is it changes the password for the admins automatically. And of course, it will not be the same password every single day. It has to be hard enough so the attacker cannot find a pattern. So maybe today the password might start with an @ symbol. In the afternoon, it will change to hashtag. Tomorrow, it'll start with a number. The next day, it will start with a letter. It's just so unique that it will be very hard to keep in track of the new password. And of course, regular patching. Regular patching is very great for a hardening recommendation for the Windows Server 2019, being that companies or people, in fact, we don't usually update our things. And being on top of updating our security system will help us from getting in any cyber attack. It will make us less vulnerable because most attacks, fortunately, are from vulnerabilities a year ago. And if you're on top of our update, we would not be exposed to any vulnerabilities. The next OS is the Ubuntu Server 20.04 LTS. The Ubuntu Server 20.04 LTS is a Linux-based operating system that brings stability and security through ESM. Now you might be like, what is ESM? ESM is an extended security maintenance that keeps security updated on Ubuntu servers. Some key features of the Ubuntu Server 20.04 LTS is the Ubuntu Server Live Installer. Personally, I love this feature because it automatically updates the Ubuntu so the users could be on top of everything. Most of the time, companies, people, we forget to update our phones, our servers. So Ubuntu took it upon themselves to create, a live installer so it could be updated and will be less vulnerable. Next is the WireGuard VPN, and it utilizes modern cryptography and streamlined usability to provide efficient communication between networks. And lastly, the Linux kernel 5.4. This Linux kernel bring better hardware support and improve the performance of the server. It does this because it's on top of another Linux kernel, so it makes it very good when it comes to support in the hardware and the improvements of the server. Some hardening recommendation for the Ubuntu 20.04 LTS includes secure the SSH. The SSH is secure socket shell, and harden the SSH is vital to the security of Ubuntu because it doesn't give the hacker unlimited access to the server. Now, if the hacker do get hold of the SSH key, they could have access to everything, and this is not what we want. So we have to secure the SSH, like not giving the password out to everybody. We have to limit who could get a password and what, even if they could have it, we have to know what they're using it for, so far and so forth. Enabling the firewall is essential because, as previously stated, firewall monitors the incoming and outgoing of traffic. You have to enable the firewall. It helps to monitor what's going in and out of the traffic. And although it is pre-installed onto Ubuntu, sometimes some people tend to turn it off. So it, make people more vulnerable to threats. And one key thing about enabling the firewall in Ubuntu is it automatically closes on use ports. So of course, not all traffic will be permitted, makes it even better. And once again, keeping everything updated. Always keep everything updated. Everything has to be updated. It makes you extra protected. It makes the server extra protected and secure from attacks. Now is the Windows Firewall. The Windows Firewall is a security feature that is integrated into the Windows operating system. The firewall includes filtering for incoming and outgoing network traffic, as well as it controls it. The firewall uses rule-based filtering, and rule-based filtering is a technique firewall uses to determine which traffic it can allow to pass through. The advanced security feature is implemented in the system. It also deals with rule-based filtering and it helps create the rule. So the advanced security feature and the rule-based filtering works together. The advanced security feature creates the rule, and then the rule-based filtering makes sure the rules are being followed, so you will not be under any attacks. We have the firewall. Some key features for the Windows firewall is stay-through mode. This feature helps block malicious users from having access to the network devices and services. This makes the host less susceptible to being in contact with the attackers. And then the other key feature is group policy management. This management is easier because administrators have access to group policy to enforce new rules and make sure it is secure. As we previously stated on the other slide, that the rule-based filtering makes sure that the rules created in the advanced security feature is being used and passed through. The administrators have to make sure that it is being used. So they all in together kind of work together to make sure our firewalls work good and are secure. Some key hardening recommendations for the Windows firewalls include enabling the firewall, of course. Most organizations seem to turn off their firewalls, and it is not known why they do that, because firewalls is automatically enabled into the Windows server to, help to control what is going in and out of the traffic, but they turn it off and then they get under attack, and now we have to figure it out. But having it on automatically reduces threat, of course, and it's a good practice. Next is establishing rules. Having incoming and outgoing traffic rules specified for just your traffic is important because it allows you to evaluate what is going on in the networks and it makes it easier to determine when there is something malicious going on. And the last one is configuring default behavior. Configuring default behavior is important in a firewall because it helps determine what to do when the network traffic doesn't match the rules established in the firewall's rules. This harder recommendation works well in hand with establishing rules, meaning it can be accomplished without having a specific firewall rule. This is very important, especially the last part. Most of the Windows firewalls, they work hand in hand. So if you don't have an established rule, you can't configure default behavior. So the next firewall is the IP tables, and the IP table deals with Linux. IP table is a Linux firewall that is responsible for managing and filtering networks by using the IP rules. Some key features of the IP tables are chain-related operations. Since IP tables are organized into rule chains specifying the rules that you can control the rules and customize the firewalls. NAT is the network access translation. This feature helps maps out IP tables and ports between networks and filter table. The filter table includes the main and the default tables used in IP tables, which means it determines if the packet should be allowed to its destination or not. Some key hardening recommendations for IP tables include default policies. With having policies on default, all traffic will be blocked unless specified. It will be passed through. This is very important because we do not want all traffic to go through. That would be very bad for security, because there we could determine, hey, this is good, this is bad. It might be time consuming to, go through each rule to specify what goes through, but at the end of the day, it is beneficial to us and what we want to do with it. Allow SSH. Allowing SSH is beneficial hardening technique. For the IP tables, this is a great technique, but in order for it to be properly executed, there needs to be set rules created in order for things to work. Like the firewalls, always rules is something that needs to be created for it to work. And it tends to go hand in hand with each other. One cannot be done without the other. And port knocking. Port knocking is when ports are covered, so another port can be open just for a limited amount of time. This is very important. We do not, once again, want every port to be open. It will make it hard for us to determine the network traffic, what is a threat, what's not a threat. So in port knocking, it will be limited to what we can see, and it will help us evaluate things. And this is the citations for the PowerPoints. Thank you so much for tuning in.